class. Good day. So welcome to our introduction to understanding self. So this will be our first recorded module for this course. I'm hoping that you will end this. So hindi lang makikinig kayo tapos mawawala kayo. So hoping na lahat ng mga sabihin ko dito will help you through this. So this will be the whole module 1. So we will have 3 sessions pero in one. So, umpisahan natin para mabilis tayo. I will be holding the microphone para mas maayos yung audio natin. Okay? So, first, let's start with an icebreaker. After this class, we will have a synchronous class, mabilis lang, for questions and clarifications. And then afterwards, you will have your quiz. So, make sure na nakikinig talaga kayo. Okay. First, icebreaker po natin, draw a pig. Any kind of pig, kung anong klaseng baboy. So, get a paper, tapos draw a pig. Drawing ka ng pig, kailangan mong mag-participate. So, after you draw the pig, you take a picture of it, and then I will post something on our joint or our close group sa Facebook. Tapos nakalagay doon, dito ilalagay or you put your icebreaker here or your output sa icebreaker. So doon nyo siya i-comment. At the end of this, we will be interpreting kung ano yung ibig sabihin nung dinrawing yun na pig. So, disclaimer, hindi ito isang psychological test na valid. This is just all for fun. Okay? So, sige, you can pause this and then you can draw your pig. So this is Module 1, Introduction to Understanding Self. As I said, meron itong tatlong section or sessions. First is the social, environmental, and other life factors or self. Section 2 is what is philosophy and what it says about ourselves. And then Section 3 is what science says about the self. So let us do Section 1 without further ado. So our intended learning outcome for session 1 is that at the end of this session, you are expected to determine the different factors that contributes to one being, evaluate the impact of these factors through self-appraisal, and synthesize the influence of factors to self through assessment. So merong assessment na gagawin after this. I will post it on our Google Classroom. So overview of self and identity. The self is a topic that is often talked about but largely goes unnoticed. So madalas natin sinasabi, myself, me, myself, and I. Sinasabi natin siya, we take it for granted, pero hindi natin talaga napapansin that we're talking about it. So when we use the word I, so I am, I live in, I do this, I do that, the self is highlighted as the actor. So when we say I, diba, in English, ibig sabihin, you are saying that you are doing the antecedent or the complement in that sentence. So the consciousness of existence of self has been almost automatic or reflexive. So the moment that you were born or the moment that you have consciousness on yourself, nalalaman na natin na tayo ay buhay. Nagiging automatic na yung consciousness natin sa self natin, and people are almost unaware of it, that in our daily lives, we are constantly acknowledging self. So almost every day sinasabi natin yung word na ako. So scholars of different fields have attempted to explain and thoroughly expound on several issues and controversies about the nature, existence, and dimensionality of self. So pag-uusapan natin sa section na to, yung different point of view, kung ano yung take ng philosophy, ano yung take ng psychology, sociology, anthropology, at ano pang logy. So, and the prevalent among issues on self are on nature and nurture, which is yung napag-usapan natin at yung activity nyo sa post-class natin last time. So, pwede din pag-usapan din natin yung identity versus self and dimensionality of self. So, let us first review what is nature and nurture. So, some insist that self is predominantly a product of natural process to which people inherently predispose. So, tulad ng sinasabi ko, merong mga bagay na pinaglalaban ng mga nativists na ang sarili daw natin is a product of everything that is in our genetic makeup. So the other side, meanwhile, which is the nurturist, argues that self should be principally viewed as an outcome or various nurturing factors in context of one's life. So it is the exposure of oneself. Kung saan ka na-expose, yun yung dahilan kung bakit ganyan ka ngayon. So while these issues about the predominance of either nature or nurture are still unresolved, one can safely assume that self is a product of nature and nurture. So madalas, yun yung sinasagot natin na yes, you have this predisposition, but it is according to your exposure or to the life that you live, kaya nagiging tayo ang tayo ngayon. So what is the difference between identity and self? So you need to know about this. Self and identity are topics that remains popular not only among psychologists, but also among the social scientists like sociologists, culture anthropologists, and economists. So self and identity are loosely interchanged. Madalas silang napagpapalit. Minsan sinasabi nila, it is your identity. Sometimes you have to make yourself known. So, ano ba yung difference nila? Sometimes literatures are saying that they're synonymous. So, identity is defined as qualities, beliefs, etc. that makes a particular person unique. So, pag sinabing identity, ito yung bagay na nagbibigay sa'yo ng uniqueness, na sa'yo lang meron ng ganon. So, self refers to the person that someone normally or truly is. Pag sinabi naman natin self, ito yung tayo kapag walang ibang nakatingin, or the entire person of an individual. Furthermore, identity distinguishes or compares one from another. For example, sino sa magkakapatid yung sinasabi mo? You will identify, yung matangkad, yung maputi, yung mataba. So pag sinabi natin yon, it refers to the identifier or what is your identifier? So tanungin niyo yung sarili niyo ngayon, what identifies you? Pag sinabi yung pangalan mo, ano yung magiging identifier ng ibang tao para maalala ka ng mga tao na yon? So, on the other hand, self refers to the total characteristic or qualities of a person, both known and unknown. So, sometimes, ito yung mga pinapakita mo sa ibang tao, pero meron ka ding tinatago sa loob mo. So, in Tagalog or in Filipino psychology, identity is pagkakakilanlan and self is pagkatao. Okay. So, the dimensionality of self and identity. Identity of a person is highlighted by a dominant trait which makes him or her distinguishable from others. Yun nga yung sinasabi natin, yung physical attributes wherein pinapakita kung ano ka, pwedeng, siya yung pinakamatangkad sa klase ng ganito, siya yung pinakamaputi, siya yung pinaka-sexy, siya yung or pwedeng positive or negative. Certain traits, yan yung pinakamaingay sa klase namin. Yan yung pinakapalabiro. Yan si ganito, si ganyan, si ganito. So, several observable traits combined. So, madalas, kapag nag-identify tayo, pag sinabi mo, yung matangkad, sino? Sinong matangkad? So, pwedeng hindi mo siya agad magets. Pero pag sinabi mo yung matangkad, tapos kinumbine mo siya na yung ganito, ganyan, 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 other traits like yung mabait na matangkad, yung small giant. So, for example, sa ano na lang, Tito Vic and Joey. Pag sinabi mo, sino ba si Vic doon? Yung lalaki. So, it can saying na lalaki identify Vic? Hindi, di ba? Yung lalaki tapos payat. So, si Joey, mataba siya. So, out na siya sa usapan. Pero si Tito Soto at Vic Soto are both payat. So, syempre, hindi mo pa rin ma-identify. So, you still need to dig deeper. Pwede mong sabihin na, yung asawa ni Pauline Luna. Or maybe, yung tatay ni Vico Soto. So, that can already identify kung sino si Vic Soto. So, social factors. Developmental social scientists have identified social factors as an agent of one's being. So, yung mga bagay sa paligid natin, yung society itself, is the agent for what we are right now. So it refers to family, playmates, school, church, neighbor, friends, and love life. So yung pinakauna is yung family. Nung pinanganak ka, kung anong klase yung pamilya yung meron ka, it will identify you. Kung yung family ninyo ay mababait, most likely nagiging mabait din tayo. Kung yung family ninyo, um, medyo maingay, most likely maingay din yung tao na yon. So, it reflects on who you are. Playmates, kung sino yung mga naging kalaro, mga brusko ba ng daan, nagtutumbang preso ba yan, o yung mga nagko-computer games, madalas, nakakakuha ka ng ugali ng mga tao na yon. And then afterwards, nung nag-school na tayo, kung anong school ka nag-school, example, may mga certain ugali yung mga graduates ng other schools. For example, meron sa San Fernando, pag graduate ka ng isang Catholic school dun sa San Fernando and you're a girl kasi that's an all-girls school, madalas na-identify, ano yan, kasi ganito siya. So, hindi ko sasabihin yung pangalan, of course. And then, yung church mo, kung Catholic ka, if you're Iglesia ni Cristo, you're Christian, it also can affect you and it's an agent of your PE. Yung neighborhood ninyo, kung sa subdivision ka ba tumira, sa slum areas ka ba tumira ng tondo, therefore nagkakaroon din yan ng effect. Yung mga naging kaibigan mo, ang sabi nga nila, di ba, birds of the same feathers make a good feather duster. Hindi. Birds of the same feathers are flock together. So, ibig sabihin, kung sino yung mga, tell me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are. So, madalas kung sino yung mga kaibigan natin, yun din yung nagre-reflect kung sino tayo. And also, yung ating love life. Kaya minsan bitter ka kasi naging experience mo yan, pero marami sa mga kabataan ngayon, kahit wala pang experience, ay bitter na sa buhay. Maybe because of the love life, yung imagined love life nila, doon sa kanilang mga interest. So those things are agents of one's being. So in the formative years, all the acquired factors will be integrated and will form our personality. So in the first 5 years of our life, lahat ng nangyari na dun sa, sabi ng psychology, lahat ng nangyari dun sa first 5 years ng life mo will form who you are right now. And personality is the individual pattern of thinking, feeling, and behaving. So later on, we will talk about more about personality. So there's no two people that have identical personality and every individual is unique. So that is actually my principle in psychology, that the individual is more important. Hindi mo pwedeng sabihin, kambal yan, kaya parehong-pareho. Hindi. So doon lumilitaw na meron genetic predisposition but also yung ating exposure to other people can also affect who we are. Kasi may mga kambal, may mga triplets, may mga kakapatid. Pareho naman sila ng kinakain. Pareho naman sila ng magulang. Pareho sila ng tirahan. Pero dahil iba yung exposure nila sa school, iba yung friends nila, nagkakaroon ng difference dun sa personality nila. Tama ba? So ngayon, environmental factors. Environmental factors are natural forces that broadly includes physical and communal elements present in our daily surroundings. For example, kung ikaw ay pinanganak sa region or area, so example, yung mga Kapampangan, bakit malakas ang boses ng mga Kapampangan? Dahil sila ay lumaki dito sa lugar wherein normal ang malakas ang boses. Nagsasalita sila, hindi naman sila galit, pero bakit parang galit sila? It's because of the geographical region and area. Because the Kapampangans of the old times, malalayo ang bahay. Kaya nga, Pampanga, it's because they are dwellers of the ilog. Ibig sabihin, yung mga bahay nasa Pampang, nagsisigawan yung mga tao para marinig nila yung isa't isa. Yun yung way nila to speak. So, yung climate, pwede din makaapekto yung ating klima, kung bakit may mga tao na dun sa mga regions wherein may mahahabang winters or mahahabang nights, kung bakit nagkakaroon ng seasonal affect disorders wherein nalulungkot yung mga taong nandoon. Bakit kaya masasaya yung mga Pilipino? And then temperature, di ba maraming tao ang tumataas ang presyon, nagiging magagalitin kapag mainit. Forms of land, tulad nga ng sinabi ko, may mga tao pag yung mga taga-bundok, iba yung ugali ng mga taga-dagat or mga taga-batag. And then norms of the community. So for example, in Pampanga, kapag taga-baryo ka, normal na nakataas ang paa kapag kumakain, pero kapag lumaki ka sa city or lumaki ka sa mga alta sosyedad na lugar, kapag nagtaas ka ng paa bigla habang kumakain, mawiwirduhan sila sa'yo kasi hindi yun yung norm or normal doon sa lugar na yun. Hereditary factors naman are factors that operates from the time of conception. So heredity is a biological process by which a certain trait and characteristic are passed on from one generation to another. So for example, sa akin, yung parents ko, kung titingnan ko, hindi ko sila kamukha. Pero yung generation ko, yung balat ko nakuha ko sa nanay ko, yung traits ng aking hair nakuha ko din sa nanay ko, yung ilong ko nakuha ko sa tatay ko, yung mata ko I think halo siya, yung pupil ng mata ko, yung iris niya nakuha ko sa nanay ko, pero yung pilik mata ko nakuha ko siya sa tatay ko. Yung ngipin ko nakuha ko siya sa tatay ko. So you get the idea that everything that I am right now physically is a combination of my mother and my father. So there are negotiable hereditary traits like yung physical attributes, wala ka nang magagawa kung ganyan ka pinanganak. Ito na talaga yung natural ko na balat. Kung gusto kong pumuti, kailangan kong mag-glutathione. Kung gusto kong umiti, magbibilad ako or magpapatan ako or maglalagay ako ng mga tanning lotion. But you cannot alter yung iyong DNA. So cognitive traits, I'm thankful that my parents have high IQ. So maybe one of the things kaya medyo intellectually I'm okay. So there are people talaga na kahit na ano pang bigay na program sa kanila since birth, pinag-promil na, pinarinig na ng kung ano-anong music, pero yung cognitive traits dahil medyo sabihin natin hindi yon yung intelligence na ibinigay sa kanyang mga magulang, maaaring mahihirapan siya. So I believe in the multiple intelligence, hindi porke hindi ka magaling sa math, bobo ka na, sorry so great. Hindi porke hindi ka magaling sa pagsasalita, hindi ka na magaling. There are other things na namana natin cognitively sa ating mga magulang and also emotional tendencies. Kung bakit magagalitin ka, kung bakit um, chill ka lang. Maybe it's because of your parent. So, yun yung mga non-negotiable na traits na sinasabi ko na dahil sa ating mga hereditary factors. Person volition factors. So, person volition refers to the inclination of a person to form and construct a specific identity that will set him apart from others. So, example, may mga tao talaga na deviant or unorthodox. So, nasa tao na talaga yon na hindi siya sumusunod sa norm. Meron siyang ibang pag-iisip, pero not everyone is negative naman. May mga ganitong tao na trendsetters, yung mga inventors natin, yung mga revolutionists natin, yung mga activists natin. Ito yung tendency ng isang tao na umiba doon sa crowd. Yun yung tinatawag natin person volition. So, let's move on to section 2. Natapos na yung section 1 natin, self, environment, and other factors. So, the intended learning outcomes for section 2 is that at the end of this section, we should discuss the different philosophical standpoint about self, explain how philosophical models have transformed from classical to contemporary. So we will talk about from Socrates to Churchland, and then synthesize and evaluate the different perspective of self. So what is philosophy of self? Philosophy is often called the mother of all disciplines kasi lahat naman talaga ng discipline, psychology man yan, anthropology, anumang logy yan, it came from philosophy. So simply because all fields of study began in philosophical discourse. Nagsimula lahat yan kasi nagtalastasan sila, nag-usap sila. So doon nanganak si philosophy. So ancient philosopher attempted to explain natural and social phenomena, coming up with their own definition of how the world works and what factors contribute to such phenomena. Siguro nung panahon na yun, dahil wala pang TV, wala pang pinagkakaabalahan ng mga tao, marami silang time na mag-usap at mag-wonder kung bakit ba nangyayari yung mga bagay-bagay. Bakit kaya umiikot ang mundo? Bakit kaya magigising tayo? Bakit kaya na-memorize natin to? So everything, they have the discourse, they will define things, we call this psyche because it is our mind and our brain and things like that. So it is a product of philosophy itself. Self in philosophy, if we will define, Self, it is defined as the unified being. So it is the totality of what we are. So essentially connected to consciousness, awareness, and agency. So let us move to the classical antiquity. So ancient philosopher, if self can be tracked back from one of the 147 Greek apophism, aphorism, prominently inscribed in the Temple of Apollo and Delphi. So isa sa mga aphorism or principles na sinasabi natin is know thyself. So this aphorism principle was Socrates' guiding principle that he imparted to his students. So knowing thyself is the most important thing that we have to know according to Socrates. Socrates is a guru, meaning hindi to Tagalog ng teacher, pero malapit siya. Pag sinabing guru ka, you are an expert of a of a thing or isang field of study. So he was never written down his ideas. Si Socrates is not a good writer. So madalas nagsasalita lang siya. Sinasabi niya sa kanyang mga estudyante ang kailangan niyang sabihin. But he entirely articulated his principle to his students. He believed that the real self is not physical, but the soul or psyche. So for him, appearance of the body is inferior to its function. So para kay Socrates, ito, casing lang, itong nakikita nyo na katawan, it's just a case of a more important part, which is the psyche or the soul. So, naniniwala si Socrates na merong deep within us, there's a soul within us, and we should dig deeper to that soul para makilala natin yung sarili na natin, which is the know thyself. So, si Socrates, isa sa mga dinadaan niya ng maraming beses at pinagsabihan niya ng kanyang mga prinsipyo ay ang kanyang estudyante na si Plato. So, Plato, hindi Plato, pero para maalala nyo ay Plato. Yan. Is one of Socrates' prized students. He thoroughly expounded on his mentor's idea of self. So, syempre, mentor, double portion, mas matindi ang explanation at in-expound ni Plato yung mentor's idea niya. He profoundly introduced his dialogue, Phaedrus, which has been popular to many decades. So ano yung main idea ng Phaedrus? Is that the truth can be distinguished in two forms, metaphysical and physical. So kung si Socrates mayroong psyche and the case which is the body, so in-expound nga ni Plato, so mayroong metaphysical which is the mind and the physical which is the body. Sabi ni Plato, self is an intellectual entity whose nature exists independently in the physical world. So para kay Plato, hiwalay si mind, si metaphysical, at saka yung ating katawan. So Plato divided reality in two. So meron siyang parallel universe. Ayan, ontos, which is the ideal, ultimate reality. So parang kumbaga may reality stone si Plato. So ontos, which is the ideal, ultimate reality, permanent and spiritual. So para sa kanya, habang nandito tayo, habang nagsasalita ako ngayon, for Plato, there is an ideal world in the parallel universe. So kumbaga, what is happening now is a phenomena, and at the same time, in the ontos or in the ideal world, which is the ultimate reality, mas perfect. So doon wala akong mali. Yan, kumbaga, the manifestation of ideal and impermanent and inferior is this, which is phenomena according to Plato. Tandaan, open ang mind natin, pero wag magpapalito. This is just the idealism of these philosophers. Then after that, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. So, si Socrates, siya yung mentor, and then meron siyang student, which is si Plato, and then after Plato, estudyante niya si Aristotle. So, Aristotle is the prized student of Plato, so mentor. He suggested that the ideal is subsumed in the phenomena. So, in-expound niya ulit. Sabi niya, si ideal, yun yung essence mo. Phenomena, it's the matter. So he furthered that the two can coexist and are codependent. So kung yung mentor niya, sinabi magkahiwalay, they're independent from each other. Ang sinabi naman ng kanyang mentee, which is Aristotle, is no mentor. They're codependent. Kumbaga, mayroong essence, pero syempre si essence, meron siyang effect doon sa matter, and matter also has an effect on essence. So, in a nutshell, the essence provides meaning or purpose to the matter, and the matter provides substance and solidity to the essence. So, the philosophy of self has been defined in two distinct lenses. First is empiricism. Empirical means no such thing as innate knowledge. Knowledge is derived from experience or sensation or perception natin. So, yung five senses natin and yung ano yung intindi nun sa utak natin is empiricism. Pag sinabi mong empirical, nakikita, naaamoy, nalalasahan, natatouch. So, five senses. So, EF. So, empiricism, malapit siya. After nun is F, five senses. Okay? Rationalism, there is an innate knowledge. However, there are different. So, para naman kay rationalism, everything is inborn. So, rationalism, inborn or innate ang knowledge. So, pinanganak ka ng ganyan. Born to be like this. So, towards modern philosophy, let us move on. So, papunta na tayo sa contemporary philosophy. So, punta tayo kay St. Augustine. According to St. Augustine, the views of self from physical and scientific underpinnings. So, pinag-incorporate niya yan. There's physical, pero meron ding scientific. So, he also incorporated the views of Plato to his religious philosophy. So, all knowledge leads to God. Kasi nga, sabi ni Plato, di ba, merong ideal. So, in-incorporate niya yon at sinabi ni St. Augustine na lahat na natututunan natin, it leads to God. So, only the pure can see God. So, nakalagay yan sa Bible. Blessed are the pure, for they can see God in Matthew chapter 5. So, love of God, faith in Him, and understanding His gospel ultimately leads to happiness according to St. Augustine. It makes sense. And then, ito yung isa sa mga favorite kapag dun sa saan ako nag-graduate, undergrad ko is UP. Sabi nila, we have a take on this, no? Rene Descartes, I think, therefore I am. Paano mo masasabi na buhay ka? Paano mo masasabi na you are existing in this world? According to Rene Descartes, kaya para masabi mo na buhay ka because you are thinking. So kung pag hindi ka na nag-iisip, hindi ka na nag-exist. So the mind and soul can exist without the body according to Rene Descartes. So as long as you are thinking, therefore you're still existing. Establishing the distinction from soul, the body can make people believe that afterlife and the soul immortality. Kaya dito nagsimula yung paniniwala din ng maraming tao na after this life is another life because our soul is somewhat a different essence or a different area of our life. So, ang paniniwala ni Rene Descartes is I think, therefore I am. Next is si John Locke. So, ito isa sa mga economists, isa din siya sa mga philosophers. So, it is the consciousness alone that identity exists, not in the body and soul. So, according to him, yung kung ano yung gising tayo, doon mo lang makikita yung identity natin. Wala kay body, wala din kay soul. There's a distinction between man and person. Iba ang man, iba ang person. And the soul may change, but consciousness remains intact. So, pwedeng magbago yung soul mo or yung puso mo, nararamdaman mo, behavior mo, or anything. Pero yung consciousness mo will remain intact. We will talk more about consciousness later in psychology. David Hume naman, on the other side, all knowledge passes through the senses. So, empirical to. So, si David Hume, ang sabi niya, yung knowledge, it passed through our senses. Kung hindi yan dumaan sa iyong eyes, ears, nose, tongue, or whatever sense of your body, hindi yan magiging knowledge. So, separate ideas can join in the mind, and there is no self, only a bundle of perception. So, for David Hume, ito, tayo, it's just a bundle of our perception at wala tayong sarili, according to him. Remember, these are just philosophers. Baka naman sabihin nyo, may sabi ni ma'am, wala daw sarili. Hindi. We just need to tackle this so that we would understand ourselves even more. Okay? Wag lahat po ay ilagay sa ating puso. So, next naman is Immanuel Kant. So, the reason is the final authority of morality. So, reasoning ang kay Immanuel Kant, and there is an inner and outer self, which is true. We have an inner self, which is most likely pinapakita lang natin sa sarili natin, and an outer self, wherein lumalabas yan kapag nasa social gatherings tayo. The inner self includes rational reasoning and psychological state, and the outer self includes the body, physical mind, where representation occurs. So, pabago na ng pabago to. Kung si René Descartes, ang sabi niya, I think, therefore I am, si Gilbert Ryle naman, ang sabi niya, I act, therefore I am. Hindi lang isip, dapat merong gawa. So, the mind is not the seat of self, it is not a separate, it's parallel thing to our body. So, the mind is a category mistake brought about by habitual usage. So, all is force of habit according to Ryle, and the only way it can affect others is through the external world. So, kung paano tayo kumilos. Mamaya, pag-uusapan pa natin si Patricia Churchland. Weird ito kasi Churchland ang pangalan niya, pero ang sabi niya, a fully matured neuroscience will eliminate the need for belief since they are not real. So, atheist ang take ni Churchland. Churchland ang pangalan niya, pero atheista siya. The physical brain gives us sense of self. So, for Churchland, later we will talk about her more, Paul and Patricia Churchland. Yung brain natin, yung kanyang anatomy, and yung functions ng bawat part ng brain natin gives us the sense of self. Maurice Merleau-Ponty, both empiricism, which is okay. Tama, yung ating five senses and intellectualism are flawed in nature. So according to him, we are all bodies. Katawan lang tayo. And our bodily experiences do not detach the subject or object, mind, body, rational or irrational. So everything is bodily. Later on, we will talk about him more. So yan, natapos na yung section 2. Section 3 na tayo for our first module. Our intended learning outcome for this is that we should define and explain the different scientific standpoint about self, synthesize and evaluate this perspective, and come up with a comprehensive definition of self according to scientific viewpoint. So let us see the scientific perspective of self. Science, mula nung elementary tayo, junior high school, senior high school, hanggang ngayon college na tayo, na kayo, tapos na pala ako sa college. You are defining what is science. So let us define science. Science is the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of structure and behavior of physical and natural world through observation and experimentation. Okay, so let us talk about the biological or the physiological viewpoint of science. From this perspective, scientists and doctors explains how genes from both parents contributes to the characteristic of their offspring through genetics. So, kung ano ka man ngayon, yan ay bunga ng pagmamahalan ng iyong mga magulang. So, the deoxyribonucleic acid or the DNA is a self-replicating material present in all living organism. So, lahat ng living things meron DNA. So, it is a unique part of every individual. Therefore, no two individuals shares the exact same DNA. Kahit kambal pa yan, hindi sila exactly the same DNA. So, it is our blueprint as a person. The Human Genome Project, which started in 1990 up until 2003, was implemented for the purpose of mapping the function of genes and exploring the interaction of nucleotides and their effect on biological processes. So if you want to learn more about the Human Genome Project, you can look at it sa ating YouTube. So hanapin nyo lang siya, Human Genome Project, para may appreciate nyo kung ano yon. Yung Human Genome Project, ito yung project na maraming lumitaw din ng mga gamot on cancer, stem cell, and things like that. So let us talk about neurophilosophy. So neurophilosophy, ito yung sinasabi natin kanina, si Paul and Patricia Churchland na nagsasabi na hindi mo kailangan maniwala sa being because they don't exist. So everything is association of brain and mind. To understand the mind, we need to first understand the brain, the function, and yung wave activity. So everything, it's because of the alpha wave of your brain. So they argued that the philosophical notion of free will, common sense, and conscientiousness are all non-existing. So human consciousness, worldview, and beliefs are contributes connected to brain physiology and functioning. So kaya ganyan magsalita kasi ganyan yung utak mo. All in all, in a nutshell, yun yung ibig sabihin ni Paul and Patricia Churchland. So ito na naman si Maurice Merleau-Ponty. So understanding the world should not be unidimensional. Hindi lang pwedeng isa lang ang iyong intindi. It is a product of both idealism and realism. So let us move on to psychoneuroimmunology. Ang haba, di ba? Parang pneumono ultramicroscopic cerebral conocognosis. So, parang medyo mahabol to sa longest name. Psychoneuroimmunology. Shaping oneself as similar to how human immune system function. So, yan, medyo naiintindihan natin yung immune system kasi nga, di ba, as of the moment, ang panlabang lang natin sa ating mga kalaban na COVID-19 is our immune system. Our immune system reject harmful foreign matters na kinakalaban ng ating mga white blood cells and builds up on the existing molecules to have a healthy body. So pag nasugat ka, pinasukan ng infection yan, kaya yan nagkakaroon ng nana, it's because of the white blood cell building para hindi na makapasok yung other foreign objects. But there are times that the foreign matters, example, kapag nagkaroon ka ng transplant, kailangan mo yon, helpful yon, it enters your system, thus it helps, it becomes permanent fixtures within the body. So, anong kinalaman nito sa psychoneuroimmunology? In this context of self, individual capitalize on their innate attributes. So, meron ka ng innate attributes. Yun nga yung inborn sa'yo. Ngayon, meron mga bagay na reject mo on your environment, pero you will be in discovering yourself. Kailangan mong i-invite, kailangan mong tanggapin, kailangan mong isapuso yung external experience that are helpful to you. So, reject those derive pleasure from. Okay. So, yun yung ibig sabihin ng psychoneuroimmunology. May mga bagay na kailangan mong i-reject, may mga bagay na kailangan mong i-invite. So, let us move on social sciences. Social sciences are concerned with human functioning in the context of society and social institution. So, social, kasi nga, social sciences. So, institution, things around us, environment. So, of course, my favorite, psychology. It's my undergrad, my master's, and my life right now. So, psychology is the study of human behavior. So, for psychology, self is a theoretical construct. So, for us, kapag sinabi mo yung self sa psychology, theoretical yung take namin sa kanya. So, self not only indicate an acceptance of existence, so hindi lang siya pag-accept na ikaw ay nabubuhay, but the importance in characterizing human, psychological, and personal attributes. Speaking of personal attributes, so we will talk about personality. Sa personality kasi mayroon self-concept, self-awareness, and things. Basta ang daming self-confidence, self-awareness, things like that. So, maraming mga words in psychology that has self. So, we will discuss some of them. The first one is self-awareness. So, pag sinabi natin self-awareness, it is the consciousness about one's strength, weakness, and potential. So, pag a person is self-aware, you know your strengths, you know your weaknesses, you know your potentials, as well as underlying factors that contributes to aspect of the self. So, yun yung isa sa mga gusto nating mangyari dito sa course na to. Makilala nyo yung sarili nyo, malaman nyo kung ano yung strengths nyo, malaman nyo kung ano yung mga weaknesses nyo, and malaman ninyo kung ano yung potential mo bilang tao. Okay, next is self-concept. It is the closest depiction of the self. So the description of how one's look like, sounds like, and behaves like. So implicit personality theory that one holds towards self. So it is your concept. Sino ka? Anong konsepto mo sa sarili mo? It is your depiction. Ito yung closest description, closest definition mo sa self mo. It is your self-concept. So, theories in psychology, napakarami nito. Actually, isa to sa mga modules na pinag-exam sa psychology, even in psychometrician, theories in psychology. And then also, isang buong SEM namin tong inaral sa lahat ng theories, inaral namin noong undergrad, also sa aking graduate school. So let us talk about 4 of the theories, which are psychoanalysis, behaviorism, social cognitive theory, and humanistic. Sa psychoanalysis, kung nag-Netflix kayo, huwag yung papanoorin. Yung Freud kasi yung cinematology niya, masyadong nag-focus sila dun sa pagiging cinematic niya. Hindi na ganun ka-valid or reliable yung kwento. But psychoanalysis, according to Freud, is that the core element of self is the unconscious. So, meron kasing tatlong level of consciousness according to Freud, yung ating conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. So, according to Freud, kung titignan natin sa iceberg, so, kung meron tayong ice, did you know that kung yung ice, ilalagay mo siya sa water, 10% lang ng ice yung lulutang, and the other 90% ay nakalubog sa baba. Kaya nga dun sa Titanic, di ba, kung napanood nyo yung Titanic, akala nila maliit lang yung iceberg, and then they didn't know that time na that is just 10% of the iceberg. So kung gagawin nating metaphor, gagawin natin siyang in comparison sa ating consciousness, the 10% is our conscious mind, wherein yung gising ka, you are conscious about it, and 90% is unconscious. So, according to Freud, kung sino tayo, yung core element natin is in our unconscious or yung kalalim-laliman ng ating pagkatao. At madalas, ito'y nabubuo in the first 5 years of our life. Behaviorism naman is largely because of conditioning. So sabi ng mga behaviorists, bigyan mo ako ng bata, kaya ko siyang i-train. Kahit galing pa yan sa mga kriminal na pamilya. Merong isang movie na ganito, may dalawang scientist na nag-ampon sila ng mga bata. Yung isa sobrang moron, yung low IQ. Tapos ititrain nila as genius according to behaviorism, and then meron naman galing siya sa mga pamilya ng mga kriminal. Both parents are criminals, and then the behaviorists will train them into a very good person. So according to behaviorists largely because of conditioning. So learning, everything is learned. Lahat ng mga bagay na meron tayo, yung takot natin, yung mga phobia natin, lahat ng mga bagay na pinagdadaanan natin, it is because of conditioning. Hindi yan yung nilalagay sa ulo, okay? So, conditioning is learning something, okay? So, social cognitive theory man considers behavior as a function of environment and internal attribute. So, our environment, also, kung saan tayo pinanganak, yun nga, nalalearn natin yan. Nakita natin, ay, napalo siya. Kahit hindi na natin yun gawin, nalalearn na natin siya, or we get the idea na we don't need to do that. Example, doing drugs. Di mo kailangan mag-drugs para lang malaman na mahihirapan ka or masisira yung buhay mo. So you don't need to really try something so that you can learn things. So social cognitive theory is learning through observation. On humanistic naman, so ang humanistic, ang pinaka-core nito is our ability to reach self-actualization. So si self-actualization, kilala nyo yan, and transcendence. So, yun yung gusto nating maabot to actualize ourselves. So, kumbaga, in the world history, ang nakapag-actualize pa lang ay sina Mahatma Gandhi at saka si Mother Teresa. Kung titignan natin, so yung pinakababa is our needs for being like food, yung sex, yung water, things like that. And then after that is socialization and so on and so forth. So yung pyramid, yung hierarchy of needs. And then each person is inherently good. So lahat tayo, according to humanistic psychology, are good or possesses good things within us. So yun yung ibig sabihin ng humanistic. Let us move on to sociology. So kung ang psychology is the individual, sociology is collective behavior, the study of collective behavior, the impact of social institution and relationship within the society and one's thought, feelings, and behavior. So kung anong impact ng bawat tao sa bawat tao. So it includes family, crime, religion, poverty, and education. And then let's move on to anthropology. So I have this professor I would like to share lang. In college, nung undergrad niya, psychology, ang tinake niya, master's niya, sociology, and ngayon sa doctorate niya, anthropology. So na kumpleto na niya ito. So anthropology is the study of human, their ancestor through time and space, evolution of individual and their society, and cultural tools embedded within generation. Tulad nga ng sinabi ko kanina, why Kapampangans or why Angelenos are like this, it is because of anthropology. Dahil sa kinalakhan na napasa ng mga traits from generation to generation. Kung bakit malakas ang boses, kung bakit wala lang yung letter H, kung bakit magaling tayo magluto, it is because of anthropology. Inherited yan. It is the evolution. Kinailangan ng mga Kapampangan maging magaling sa pagluluto at kinailangan din natin maging malakas ang boses. Then let's move on to policy or political science. It is the participation of an individual in establishing government and making political choices. So kung DDS ka, policy yan. Kung dilawan ka, policy yan. Kung indifferent ka, wala ka, none of the above ka, hindi ka DDS, hindi ka din dilawan, tao ka lang, Pilipino ka, therefore, policy yon. So, factor affecting political choices. Madalas, pag yung tatay mo ay Marcos apologist, dahil yun yung naririnig mo, dahil yun ang naituturo sa'yo, nagiging Marcos apologist din tayo. Sometimes also sa upbringing sa school, yung mga kaibigan mo, pag DDS sila, nagiging DDS ka din madalas. Or minsan, na-unfriend mo sila dahil hindi mo gusto yung viewpoint nila. So, we need to respect one another, and it is a product of our political factors or choices in behavior, and that is the study of policy. Economics, so describes and analyzes the production, distribution, and consumption of goods. So, nung junior high school, I think you already knew about this, kung bakit nung umpisa ng lockdown, nag-hoard yung mga tao. It's because of economics. So, bakit tumataas yung mga bilihin ngayon, ang hirap ngayon ng buhay? It's because of the economics. So, this is the study of economics. At meron yung sinasabi sa sarili natin, ano yung pagkatao ng mga taong nag-hoard? Anong pagkatao ng mga tao na nagtatago ng mga bagay-bagay, or nung nakita nila, ay, magpipiki na ng facial, ay, i-require na yung facial, tataasan namin yung presyo. So, it tells more about those people, yung pagkatao ng tao na yon. And it is also talked about in economics. So, that's the end of section 1, 2, 3 for our module 1. So, ngayon, i-explain na natin yung draw a pig natin. So, hopefully, natapos nyo na yung pig. And para kayo ay umattend sa ating synchronous class, ayan, puputulin ko ngayon at abangan sa synchronous class kung ano ang ibig sabihin ng baboy na iyong dinrowing. Ayan. And after nung question and answer natin doon, I will post a quiz assignment quiz on our Google Classroom. So, abangan nyo yon. Have your time na sagutin yung mga questions doon. Sabi ko nga sa inyo, hindi ako ganun kahigpit na teacher. Basta sagutin nyo lang siya dun sa time na pwede nyo nang sagutin before the deadline. Also, please, kapag may Google form, mark as done ninyo kahit walang attachment yung inyong mga assignment para hindi kayo kulitin ni Google. Kasi kinukulit kayo ni Google, tapos ang ginagawa nyo, kinukulit nyo ako. So, hopefully, naiintindihan na natin. Thank you so much, and dun sa next natin session, I will also make it a point na ako'y nakapag-record na para ma-review nyo ito. I will also upload a PDF of this presentation on our Google Classroom. So thank you so much. Note nyo na yung mga tanong nyo, and see you sa ating class on our synchronous class.